Hey guys, we're going to show you how to adjust the chain on your youth ATV. A lot of other ATVs are similar as well, but you can see this chain on this 2008 Can-Am DS90 is a little floppy, so let's go ahead and tighten it up. It's super simple. You don't need a whole lot of tools. You need a 10mm wrench or socket on a ratchet so you can remove the chain guard. You can see I have the chain guard bracket here, but the chain guard is actually not on there. It went missing at some point in the past, so it is what it is. But let's go ahead and remove that. And on this Can-Am specifically, the chain guard is a 10mm bolt. Yours may be different, your mileage may vary, but we need to remove the chain guard so we can get to this top bolt here. Without the, I mean, you can do it without it. You can use the open end of a 17mm wrench and you'll be just fine, but I'd like to use a ratchet on this just because it's a little bit easier. So for the Can-Am, next thing you'll need is to take two 19mm lock nuts off, one right here, the other one down here on the bottom, and you can see here how it's got a slider. It's got an elongated hole to slide, so that's where your adjustment's going to come from. And we want to go and loosen those up. You only have to loosen them up a couple, just a couple turns. You don't need to back it all the way off. On the right side, you're going to have two 17mm bolts to remove. One here, and you're just going to loosen those up as well. I already pre-loosened that one because it was down in the... Alright, so once you get them a couple turns loose, that'll allow the carrier to rotate. With those out of the way, next thing you're going to do is you're going to come down here to the chain adjuster, and this one does have a replacement chain adjuster on it. The factory Can-Am, it's got a 6mm thread, so it'll be a 10mm nut, two 10mm nuts. This one I had to buy an aftermarket one because the factory part is no longer available. And with this one, it's an 8mm thread, so it's got 13mm nuts on it. So you just want to take your 13mm wrench and loosen up the jam nut that you've got. Because that's what locks it in place. Then once you have that out of the way, you can go to the second nut, the inner nut, and to tighten the chain, all you'll do is tighten that nut up. And as you do, you'll see the whole carrier rotate within those notches in the bottom. So you can use a wrench, you can use a deep well socket, whatever you'd like to use. And as you go, you just want to check chain tension because you're going to be tightening it up. So as you get tighter, you just keep an eye on it. There's not a whole lot of room to work with an open end wrench, but I'd rather not have to take that second jam nut all the way off to use a socket, so that's why I use a wrench. Now you can see as it gets in there, we're getting a little bit tighter. Then you're going to want to load the suspension, so you just either pull down on it and check the tension when the suspension is loaded, because you don't want it to be too tight at that point either. So we're getting really close. Let me back it off just a hair. Let's pull it up. Alright. Got about a ½ inch there, so that'll be good. And then at that point you can bring your jam nut back up. Do it by hand. And then you just want to tighten the jam nut. That way it'll keep the other one from backing off as well. Once those are done, you're going to go back and you're going to reverse the steps. You want to tighten up the bolts that you just loosened. don't have to go gorilla tight on these things. They are lock nuts on the 19mm side, but you also want to be able to get these off in the future. So don't go gorilla tight, just give it a reasonable amount. Alright. With those, then we'll put the chain guard mount back on. Like I said, those are just two 10mm bolts. And if you still have the chain guard, it's obviously these 3 Phillips headed machine screws that hold the chain guard itself on to protect you from, you know, flying chain. And you can do this with the bike on the ground. You don't have to have it up on jack stands, because I just put it up in the air because it's a lot easier to get to those bottom bolts with tools when it's a little bit elevated, but it's not totally necessary. You don't need to. You can do it with a wrench on the ground. It's just a little bit harder. But that's it. Nice and easy. The chain's now tensioned. You have a little more slack when the suspension's not loaded, and pulls up nice and tight when the suspension is loaded. Once you're done with everything else, get your chain wax, chain lube, whatever your favorite flavor is, and make sure you spray your chain. You always want to make sure it's nice and lubricated. You have to rotate it around. Alright, if this helped, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. Comments, always appreciated. Let me know if this helped you out. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'll be happy to answer them for you.